The clock in the hallway had just turned 12 when the knocking started. Soft, careful, 3 times. At first, I thought it was the wind. Then again, slower, like someone who already knew I was awake. I walked to the door barefoot. The floorboards complained under my weight, that tired, familiar creak that only old houses know. The porch light flickered once, then held steady. Through the rain-glazed window, I saw her silhouette, thin, still, holding something close to her chest. And when I opened the door, the night leaned in with her. Rain had soaked her coat through. The water clung to her hair, darkening it to ink. She didn't shiver, didn't even look cold. She just stood there, eyes wide but calm, eyes I knew, or thought I knew. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. I hadn't seen eyes like that since my daughter. She tilted her head slightly, steadying me like she was trying to remember something. Then she spoke, quiet as rain on glass. "My name's Leah." Her voice was soft, uncertain, like it hadn't been used in a while. She reached into her coat pocket and pulled out something wrapped in plastic. "I think this belongs to you," she said. It was an old photograph, faded at the edges but unmistakable. Me, my husband, and our little girl, smiling, her hands full of daisies. The photo I'd buried with him. I looked up at the woman again. The porch light trembled over her face, and for a heartbeat I saw my daughter standing there. The same eyes, the same small dimple when she half smiled. But that couldn't be. My daughter's been gone for 5 years. I stepped aside and motioned her in. "Come in before you freeze." She hesitated, only for a breath, then crossed the threshold. The smell of rain followed her inside. The old house felt smaller with her in it, like the walls were listening. I led her into the kitchen where the kettle was still warm from earlier. She sat down slowly, the chair creaking beneath her. She didn't seem to notice. I poured her tea, though she hadn't asked for any. My hands trembled just enough that I had to grip the counter to study them. When I turned around, she was staring at the photograph again, tracing the outline of the faces with her thumb. "Where did you find this?" I asked. My voice came out lower than I expected. She looked up, meeting my eyes. "Near the old highway," she said. "The one that leads out to the lake?" I nodded slowly. The same highway where the accident happened. The same one I've avoided ever since. Something in my chest went tight. "How did you know it was mine?" She blinked once, almost apologetic. "I didn't." Then, after a pause, "But when I saw it, I felt like I was supposed to bring it here." Her words settled into the room like fog. For a long time, we didn't speak. The rain filled the silence for us. She held the cup of tea between her palms, staring into it. Her fingers, small, pale, with a tiny crescent scar along her knuckle. The same scar my daughter got falling from her bike when she was 6. My throat went dry. "That's quite a scar," I said quietly. She smiled faintly. "I've had it as long as I can remember." Something inside me broke loose, a small, trembling breath I couldn't contain. Every instinct in me wanted to reach across the table, to touch her face, to ask the question I didn't dare speak aloud. But I didn't. I just watched her. She looked around the kitchen, eyes wandering over the worn cabinets, the old clock ticking softly above the stove. "It feels familiar here, like I've been here before." The air shifted then, heavier, almost electric. I could feel the house remembering too. The lights flickered once. Thunder rolled somewhere far off. I swallowed hard. "Leah." I hesitated, the words trembling on my tongue. "That photo, you said you found it near the highway." She nodded. "I didn't really find it," she said after a moment. "It was left for me." I frowned. "Left for you?" Her gaze lifted, steady now. It was in a box with a note that said, "You'll know where this belongs." The sound of rain on the windows grew louder, a deep, steady rhythm that filled the spaces between our breaths. My heart beat slow and heavy, as if it understood something before my mind did. She stood after a while, setting the teacup gently back on the table. "I should go," she said. "Didn't mean to disturb you." I followed her to the door. The storm had calmed outside. Only a soft drizzle now. The air smelled of wet earth and electricity. She pulled her coat tighter and looked back at me, her eyes catching the porch light just so, and for that instant I could swear she was my child again. Older. Returned. "Thank you for letting me in," she whispered. I wanted to stop her, to ask her everything, but all I managed was, "Leah, wait." She turned, expectant. I pointed to the photograph in her hand. "Keep it, just for now," I said. She hesitated, then nodded once, almost like she understood something I didn't. When the door closed behind her, the house exhaled. I stood there for a long time, the echo of her footsteps fading into the rain. The clock ticked softly, the photo's absence left a shadow on the table. And for the first time in years, I realized grief wasn't the only ghost living in my house. The kitchen light hummed softly, that low, trembling sound it makes when the bulb's about to die. I sat at the table long after Leah left. The photographs spread out in front of me. Rainwater had dried along the edges, curling them slightly. The paper smelled faintly of earth and rust, like something that had been buried too long. Outside, the storm was gone. Only the dripping of the porch roof remained, slow, steady, like a heartbeat the night forgot to end. I ran my finger along the image, my husband's arm around me, our little girl on his shoulders, her hair caught mid-laugh, the three of us, frozen in a summer that shouldn't still exist. But then I saw it. Something small, something wrong. A shape behind us, faint, almost invisible, standing at the edge of the frame. It had been years since I looked at that photo. I'd burned the copies, buried the original with him, or thought I had. Now it sat there, between my hands, as if it had never been gone. The clock on the wall ticked unevenly. I could hear the kettle breathing on the stove, cooling from the tea I never finished. I turned the photograph toward the light. The colors were faded, all yellows and soft greens, the way time drains summer from old paper. But that figure, she was standing near the fence in the background. Barely a silhouette. A dress, maybe. Hair pulled back. Watching us. I rubbed my thumb over the image until it blurred, but she didn't disappear. Something in me went cold. Leah had said she found it near the highway, said it was left for her. Why her? Why now? I reached for my glasses, the ones I rarely used, and brought the photograph closer to the lamp. It wasn't just any woman in the background. It looked like she was looking at me. The next afternoon, Leah came back. She said she had left her scarf. I hadn't realized she had one, but I didn't question it. Maybe she wanted an excuse to return. Maybe I wanted her to. She stood in the doorway again, her hair pulled back, rainless this time. The light caught her eyes, those same familiar eyes that kept me up all night. "Do you remember this?" I asked, sliding the photograph across the table. She hesitated before sitting. Her fingers brushed the corner of the image, careful, like it might burn her. "Yes," she said softly. I couldn't stop thinking about it. I watched her study it again. Her expression changed. Not fear, not recognition, just confusion. "Do you see her?" I asked. She leaned closer, then frowned. "Who?" I pointed. "Behind the fence." She squinted, then frowned. "I don't know. I didn't notice her before." Neither did I. We sat there in silence, listening to the refrigerator hum and the faint tapping of a branch against the window. "She looks out of place," she whispered. I nodded. She wasn't part of that day. I remember who took the picture. I remember everything about it. Leah looked up, her brow furrowed. "You're sure?" I almost smiled. "I was there." She didn't laugh. She just studied me, her eyes soft but searching, as if she was afraid of what I might say next.
Finally, she murmured, "Maybe it's a trick of the light." Maybe, but I didn't believe it. Neither did she. That night, I couldn't sleep. The rain had stopped completely. The house was too quiet, the kind of quiet that makes you aware of your own breathing. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, the photograph on the nightstand beside me. Every few minutes, I'd glance toward it, half expecting that shadowed woman to move, to step forward out of the frame. I thought about Leah, the way she said her name like she'd only recently learned it, the way her smile tilted, the same as my daughter's, and those eyes, how they followed me, how they unsettled something deep inside me that I'd buried with the accident. When I closed my eyes, I saw the photograph again, but in the dream, the woman behind us wasn't blurred anymore. She was clear, and she was standing closer.
When I turned the photo over again, the light from the window touched the faces. My husband's smile, my daughter's laughter caught in motion, and behind them, that faint, watching figure, still there, still waiting. I traced the outline one last time and whispered to the empty room, "Who were you?" The question hung in the air, unanswered. Outside, the fog began to lift, slow and quiet, as if the morning didn't want to show me what came next. The morning light came in slow, like it was unsure if it should. Thin lines of gold crossed the curtains, cutting through the quiet. I stood by the kitchen window with a cup that had gone cold. Outside, Leah was in the yard, hair pulled back, sleeves rolled up, her breath turning white in the chill. She was humming, softly, a tune I hadn't heard in years. It was the same melody my daughter used to hum when she drew on the porch steps, something made up, tuneless, but full of joy. That sound, carried through the morning air, reached me like a memory I wasn't ready to hold. After the night of the photograph, I hadn't expected Leah to stay, but she did. Said she was just passing through, needed a place for a few days. I told her the guest room was small and the bed creaked. She smiled. That's fine. Now she moved about the yard like she belonged to it, feeding the stray cat that always lingered near the shed, brushing leaves off the porch rail, humming the same notes that used to drift from my daughter's mouth. Every now and then, she'd stop and press her lips together before speaking to herself. A small, familiar habit, something my little girl always did when she was about to ask a question. I should have told myself it was coincidence. People share gestures, mannerisms, faces that remind us of ghosts. But grief is a cruel kind of mirror. It shows you what you want to see, even when you know better. I watched Leah tilt her face toward the light, her eyes closing against it. Those eyes, the same shade of soft brown that used to look up at me every night before bed. It was impossible, and yet I couldn't look away. Later that day, we sat at the table again. She'd made tea this time. Chamomile, just like I used to. "I hope it's okay," she said, setting the cup in front of me. "I found it in your cabinet." Her voice was light, but there was something careful underneath it, like she was measuring each word. I nodded. "It's fine." The silence that followed was long, but not empty. The clock ticked, the cat brushed against the back door, the house breathed the way old houses do. Then she spoke, without looking at me. "I don't really know who my real parents are." I looked up slowly. She ran her finger along the rim of her cup, tracing the pattern. "I was adopted. They said I was found near a highway rest stop when I was about 2. Her voice cracked a little on the last word, not enough for anyone else to notice, but I heard it. "Do you remember any of it?" I asked. She shook her head. "Just flashes. The sound of rain, A car door slamming. Someone calling my name. I think it was my name. I tried to breathe evenly, but my hands had gone cold. The highway. The rain. That night. I looked at her again, and the world tilted. Just slightly, but enough. She smiled faintly. I always wondered who they were, the people before. The cup trembled in my hand. I set it down too fast, and tea spilled over the edge. She reached for a napkin, her hand brushing mine. Warm, steady, real. And in that small, fleeting touch, my chest tightened with something I didn't want to name. After she went to bed, I sat in the living room, lights off, the house lit only by the moon. I could hear her moving in the guest room above, the sound of her footsteps, soft and deliberate, the faint hum again, the same wordless tune. I closed my eyes and saw my daughter at 5 years old, sitting cross-legged on the kitchen floor, humming the same notes as she drew a sun with too many rays. The memory came so vividly, I could smell the crayons. I opened my eyes quickly. Grief plays tricks, I told myself. It folds time in on itself. It lets you see what's gone, just long enough to hurt. But there were too many small things. The way Leah tucked her hair behind her ear, the way she stood when she listened, the scar on her hand. I tried to reason with myself. She was a stranger, nothing more. But every detail pressed closer, asking questions I wasn't ready to answer. I went upstairs quietly and stopped by her door. It was cracked open just enough. The lamp was still on, casting a soft amber light across her face. She was asleep, one hand curled under her cheek, her breathing slow. And there it was again. That same peace, that same look my daughter used to wear when I'd check on her at night. For a moment, I almost said her name out loud, but I didn't. I turned away, closed the door gently, and stood there in the hallway, holding my breath. Was it possible? Or had I finally gone too far into the echo of what I'd lost? Morning came again, pale and quiet. The kind of morning that feels half asleep. I stood by the window with my coffee, watching the mist rise off the grass. Leah was outside again, barefoot this time, feeding the cat. She looked up at the house, right toward me. And when our eyes met, those same familiar eyes, she smiled. It was small, warm, the kind of smile that used to stop me mid-breath. I didn't wave back. I just stood there, the cup trembling in my hand, feeling the thin wall between memory and reality dissolve a little more. The mist thickened, hiding her from view. And I let it. The attic always had a smell, like paper left out in the rain too long, then dried under the wrong kind of sun. That morning, I stood at the bottom of the pull-down ladder, holding my breath. The house was quiet. Even the wind outside had gone still. I hadn't been up there since the funeral. When I pulled the cord, dust fell in soft spirals, catching the weak light that seeped through the hallway window. Each step creaked like it was remembering me, the weight of my body familiar but not welcome. At the top, the air felt thinner, heavy with old time. Boxes lined the edges, some sagging, others sealed too carefully. My hands trembled as I reached for the one marked Home, Summer. I hadn't written that label. The attic light flickered once before settling into a dim orange hum. Shadows stretched long across the wood floor. I sat cross-legged beside the box, the floor groaning under me like a sigh. Inside, I found pieces of a life too soft to touch. My daughter's blue ribbon from her first recital, a half-burned candle that smelled faintly of lavender, a photo of my husband with his arm around us both, smiling like he meant it. Then I saw it, a leather-bound journal. The corners frayed, the pages swollen with time. His handwriting. The last time I saw him write was the night before the crash, a quick note on the fridge. Back soon, don't wait up. I opened the journal and it felt like opening a door I was never meant to find again. The sketches came first, rough pencil drawings of my daughter, all from memory. Her face half-finished in every one, like he couldn't quite remember how she smiled. Then, further in, the words began. The woman came again, said the warning wasn't enough. Something's still unfinished. My pulse slowed, even as my breathing grew loud in the silence. If you find this, I'm sorry. I tried to fix it before it reached her. Fix what? The light above buzzed louder, dimmer. There were pages torn out, jagged edges where something had been ripped away. And then, near the back, an envelope taped inside the cover. Inside was an old newspaper clipping. The paper had yellowed, brittle as fallen leaves. Infant found near highway after fatal crash, July 18th. That date. That was our date. The attic air shifted. Cold brushed against the back of my neck. I read the line again. Infant found near highway. My throat closed before my mind could catch up. I scanned the words beneath it. Authorities unable to identify the child, only survivor of a single vehicle accident. Single vehicle. My hand trembled so badly the paper nearly tore. Our car hadn't been found for 3 days after the storm that night. I'd been told the impact was instant, that no one else had survived. But there was no name in the article, only a photograph, blurry, small, just enough to see a blanket with tiny stars, the same pattern I used to wrap my daughter in. For a long while, I just sat there, listening. The old house creaked around me, wood settling, memory breathing. Somewhere downstairs, a clock ticked, slow and steady, as if measuring the space between one truth and another. I thought of Leah, her small, careful way of holding a cup, the way she pressed her lips before she spoke, and those eyes, the same quiet blue I used to kiss goodnight. I didn't move until I heard the rain begin outside, a slow, steady rhythm against the roof. I folded the clipping back into the envelope and set it beside me. The journal stayed open to the page with his final words. The woman who came to warn us. Who was she? A part of me wanted to believe he'd gone mad after the accident, grief bending his sense of time, his guilt writing stories in the dark. But Leah's voice from the night before echoed through me. I was found near a highway rest stop. They said I was lucky to be alive. The same highway, the same night. I closed my eyes, and for the first time in years, I prayed he hadn't lied. When I climbed down, the attic door folded up behind me with a soft click. I stood there, holding the journal to my chest, the house still as a held breath. Downstairs, Leah's laughter drifted faintly from the kitchen. She was humming again, that same tune my daughter used to hum when she played with her blocks. I walked toward the sound, but stopped just before turning the corner. She was sitting at the table, tracing her finger over the rim of her glass, the way my daughter used to do when she was thinking. The light hit her face just right, soft, gold, familiar. And I realized I was afraid to look too closely, afraid the truth might already be sitting in front of me. That night, I couldn't sleep. The journal lay open beside the bed, pages breathing faintly with the draft. Each time the wind moved through the curtains, I thought I heard his voice, a low murmur, almost apologetic. I turned the clipping over in my hands again, whispering the date under my breath. July 18, the night everything ended. Or maybe the night something else began. Before dawn, I went back to the attic. I don't know why. Maybe to be sure it was all real. The box sat where I had left it, open, waiting. I ran my hand over the edges of the journal, over the words he'd written so many years ago. Then, without meaning to, I whispered, "If she's yours, tell me." The house gave no answer, only the faint echo of rain in the distance. But as I turned to leave, a draft moved through the rafters, scattering the top layer of dust. Beneath it, another scrap of paper, caught between the floorboards. I pulled it free, a torn piece from a missing journal page. She wasn't supposed to find her. I stood there, holding it, my breath caught between disbelief and recognition, because now I wasn't sure which she he meant. By the time morning broke, the sky was pale and hollow. I watched Leah through the kitchen window again, her face turned toward the light, the steam from her tea curling like breath around her. She looked peaceful, like she belonged there. And maybe that's what scared me most. Because deep down, something in me already knew the box hadn't given me answers. It had only opened the door. And whatever waited on the other side was already awake. The morning light came slow that day, thin, gray, and tired, like it had already seen too much. Leah stood by the window, tracing the fog on the glass with her fingertip. Her breath left small clouds that disappeared as soon as they formed. She didn't turn when she said, "Can we go there?" I didn't have to ask where. The lake. Even the word felt heavy in my chest, like the air changed shape around it. For a long time, I didn't answer. The kettle hissed softly behind me, a sound too small to fill the silence between us. Finally, I whispered, "It's been years." She nodded once. I know. The road to the lake hadn't changed much. Same crooked fences, same hollow trees bent toward the wind. I hadn't driven it since the night everything ended. Leah sat beside me, her hands folded neatly in her lap. She didn't look out the window, just stared straight ahead, as if the fields rushing by were too much to bear. Every few miles, I caught her reflection in the rearview mirror, calm, still, but with something trembling behind her eyes. When we passed the old diner, I thought of the night we'd stopped there. My husband ordering cherry pie for our daughter, promising her another slice after the drive home. The memory flickered through me like an old film reel, the sound warped, the image fading before I could hold it. Leah spoke quietly. "I've seen it before." "The lake?" She nodded. "In dreams." We parked near the edge of the gravel lot, the tires crunching through wet stone. The air smelled of pine and cold metal, that sharp, clean scent of water that never forgets what it's seen. The lake stretched out before us, wide and still. Only the faintest ripples moved across its surface, catching the gray light like old glass. I stepped out first, the wind tugging at my coat. Leah followed close behind. For a while, neither of us spoke. We just stood there, two figures in the same silence, separated by years neither of us could explain. I found myself watching her,
The way she held herself, steady but small, her breath short, her eyes scanning the horizon as if searching for something long lost. "This is where it happened," I said softly. She nodded. Her hair caught the wind, strands dancing across her face. "I used to dream of this place, before I even knew it existed." The words hit the air like a tremor. I turned to her, my voice barely a breath. "What did you see?"
She hesitated. Then, almost to herself, a storm, lights in the water, and a voice calling my name. My stomach tightened. What name? She looked at me then, really looked, and for a moment, I couldn't breathe, because the way she looked at me, it wasn't like a stranger. It was like memory. The lake wind rose suddenly, pulling ripples across the surface, turning the reflection of the trees into broken shapes. Leah stepped closer to the edge, the tips of her boots sinking slightly into the damp earth. I don't know why I feel like I've been here before, but every night since I was little, this place came back to me. The same sound of water, the same smell. I wanted to move toward her, to tell her to stop, but something in me stayed still, because her voice, her rhythm, even her pauses, they were all hers, my daughter's. I pressed my hand against my chest, as if to keep my heart from making a sound. The lake keeps secrets. It doesn't give them back easily. She glanced at me. Then why did we come? I didn't know how to answer. Maybe because the truth was already waiting here. Maybe because part of me needed to see her reflection beside mine, to prove I wasn't imagining what I'd begun to believe. We sat on a low rock near the water's edge. The wind had calmed, leaving only the soft lap of water against stone. Leah stepped closer to the edge, the tips of her boots sinking slightly into the damp earth. I don't know why I feel like I've been here before, but every night since I was little, this place came back to me. The same sound of water, the same smell. I wanted to move toward her, to tell her to stop, but something in me stayed still, because her voice, her rhythm, even her pauses, they were all hers, my daughter's. I pressed my hand against my chest, as if to keep my heart from making a sound. The lake keeps secrets. It doesn't give them back easily. She glanced at me. Then why did we come? I didn't know how to answer. Maybe because the truth was already waiting here. Maybe because part of me needed to see her reflection beside mine, to prove I wasn't imagining what I'd begun to believe. We sat on a low rock near the water's edge. The wind had calmed, leaving only the soft lap of water against stone. Leah stepped closer to the edge, the tips of her boots sinking slightly into the damp earth. It's strange. I feel like I lost something here. Or maybe someone. Her words fell into the water like stones. I watched as she reached out, touching the surface with her fingertips. The ripples spread wide, breaking the stillness between us. You said you were found near a highway. How close was it? She thought for a moment. They said it was just past mile marker 17, near a lake. I closed my eyes. The sound of rain, the screech of tires, the memory came flooding back like a wave that never stopped hitting. That's where we were found. Or where I thought we were. When I opened my eyes again, Leah was staring at the horizon, her eyes glistening in the pale light. Sometimes, she whispered, I feel like I'm standing in two lives at once. One I remember, and one I shouldn't. The clouds shifted, and a sliver of sunlight spilled across the lake, breaking through just enough to reveal the shimmer beneath. For a heartbeat, I saw something, not in the water, but through it. A glint of blue cloth, a flicker of a shape I once held.
I blinked, and it was gone. Leah shivered beside me, her hand brushing mine. "Did you feel that?" I didn't trust my voice, so I just nodded. The air felt alive, like something remembered us. As we walked back to the car, the sky darkened again. Neither of us spoke, but I could feel it, the quiet thread pulling between us, the one that had been there since the moment she knocked on my door. When we reached the road, she stopped, looked back once. "I think I know why I dreamed of it." "Why?" Her eyes found mine, calm and unflinching. "Because someone wanted me to come back." The wind rose again, carrying her words out across the water. And in that moment, I felt it, the weight of every unanswered question, every echo of that night. Maybe she was right. Maybe this was never just coincidence. Maybe the lake had been waiting too. By the time we reached home, the sun had disappeared. Leah went straight to her room, leaving her shoes by the door. I stood there, still holding my coat, listening to the house settle around me. From down the hall, I heard her humming, that same tune, the same one my daughter used to hum before bed. I pressed my hand against the wall, feeling the vibration of her voice travel through the wood. Soft, familiar, and for the first time, I didn't know whether the sound comforted me or terrified me. Outside, the wind carried the scent of rain again, the same as that night. The house seemed to listen, and somewhere deep inside it, I swear I heard the lake breathing. The wind carried the smell of damp leaves that morning. That kind of quiet after rain that makes every sound feel sharper. I walked the narrow path between our houses, my boots sinking slightly in the mud. Mrs. Delaney's porch creaked the same way it always had, slow and tired, like it was remembering each year it had survived. I hadn't visited her in a long time, not since before the crash. But I had Leah's photograph in my coat pocket, and a question I wasn't sure I wanted the answer to. Mrs. Delaney's house sat under the weight of old lilac trees, their branches heavy with wet blossoms. She'd lived there since before my daughter was born. I used to see her every morning, sweeping the porch, humming to the radio. When she opened the door, she smiled at first, that polite kind of smile people use when trying to place a face from too far back. Then she saw me. "Lord, it's been years," she said, voice thin as paper. Her living room smelled of mothballs and peppermint tea. The curtains filtered the light into soft gold dust. Family photos lined every surface, faded edges, forgotten faces. I sat across from her, the air thick with the sound of the old clock ticking. She poured tea without asking, her hands trembling slightly. "You still up in that house alone?" she asked. I nodded. For now. She studied me for a moment, her eyes narrowing the way they used to when she sensed something unsaid. I took a slow breath, reached into my pocket, and slid the photograph across the table. The one Leah had brought me. Mrs. Delaney didn't touch it right away, just looked. And then, her smile faded. Her fingers moved toward the photo like she was afraid it might burn her. The light caught the edge of her wedding ring, thin, almost worn through. She whispered, "Where did you get this?" I hesitated. "Someone brought it to me. Said she found it near the old highway." Mrs. Delaney's eyes stayed fixed on the picture. "That little girl," she murmured. "She looks..." I know. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The clock ticked between us. Steady and cruel. Finally, she pushed the photo back, her hand shaking. "I shouldn't say this." "Say what?" Her lips pressed together,
like she was holding something fragile behind them. Then, in a low voice, "That night, the night of the crash," my pulse thudded in my ears. "I remember headlights. Late. Too late. I thought it was just another car taking the corner too fast." Her voice grew softer. Then I heard it. Metal, glass, and a scream that didn't sound human. She looked down at her lap, her thumb rubbing the edge of her teacup. She went on. "I called the police, but before they came, I saw someone. A man, I think, standing by the road." The air in the room shifted. Even the clock seemed to pause. Mrs. Delaney's eyes were far away now, staring at something only she could see. The photo lay on the table again. Same frame, same faces. But the longer I looked, the more it felt like something inside it was breathing. The light from the kitchen window fell across the picture, breaking it into pieces of gold and shadow. I'd seen this photograph 100 times before, our last one together before the accident. But today, I saw him. A shape I'd never noticed, standing just behind us in the blur of the trees. A man half in the light, half gone. And somehow, even through the grain of time, I knew that stance, that stillness. Mark. The house was quiet that afternoon, the kind of quiet that hums. Rain had been falling since morning, leaving streaks on the window like veins. I made tea and sat by the table, the photograph in front of me. Leah had taken it out the night before, saying she wanted to see where she came from. I didn't realize what she'd truly seen. Now, with her gone to bed, I traced the edges with my finger. My husband's smile, my daughter's small hand on his shoulder, my own eyes caught somewhere between pride and worry. And then, behind us, that faint outline. I leaned closer, squinting at the dim figure just over my husband's right shoulder. Broad frame, dark jacket. The more I looked, the more familiar it felt. Something in the posture, the way his hands hung low like he was used to carrying things. I whispered his name before I could stop myself. Mark. The sound of it filled the room and settled in the corners. My husband's younger brother, the one who stopped coming around after the argument, the one who disappeared right after the funeral, the one I hadn't thought of in years. Until now. I pulled the photo closer to the lamp, the paper bending softly between my fingers. Under the yellow light, the details sharpened, and there he was, clearer now. Mark. He was watching us, not smiling, not posing, just there. Behind the family he'd once been a part of, looking out from a place no one invited him into. I reached for my phone, took a picture, and zoomed in. The pixels bled together at first, but his eyes, those dark, steady eyes, held their shape. A coldness spread through me. I remembered the last time I'd seen him, the night before the accident. He'd come by, unannounced, drunk, maybe, angry. He and my husband argued on the porch while I rocked our daughter inside. Something about money, something about betrayal. I'd only caught fragments through the screen door. "You owe me. Don't come back here. She doesn't know." And then the sound of tires pulling away too fast. I remember my husband coming in afterward, his face pale,
his hands shaking. He never told me what it was about. Now, looking at the photograph, I realized Mark hadn't stayed gone. He'd been there that day, watching, close enough to touch us.
When I closed my eyes, the memories didn't stop. They rearranged themselves. A road, dust in the air, a small hand in mine, warm, trusting. I was standing by a road sign, letters too big for me to read, and someone beside me, tall, silent, a man. I could never remember his face, only the feeling that I was supposed to be quiet. For years, I'd thought it was my father in that memory, but now that face in the photograph flickered behind my eyelids, and everything shifted. It wasn't my father, it was Mark. The same stillness, the same coat. My breath caught. If that was real, then he'd been there that night, the night of the crash. Maybe he didn't just vanish after. Maybe he'd taken something with him. Someone. I looked back at the photo again, at my husband's arm around me, at my daughter's small face turned toward the camera, so open, so trusting, and behind her, the man whose eyes never reached the lens. I whispered to the empty room, "Why, Mark?" The air didn't answer, only the soft drip of rain outside, steady as a heartbeat. Maybe he thought he was protecting her. Maybe he thought I wasn't meant to survive. Or maybe it was something darker. I turned off the lamp and sat in the dark for a long time. The house creaked around me, the slow breathing of wood and memory. Through the window, the rain had eased. Streetlight shimmered across puddles, making them look like open eyes, staring back. I held the photo close to my chest. It felt heavier than paper should. Somewhere out there, Mark was, or had been, watching, waiting. And maybe, just maybe, he hadn't been alone. I thought of Mrs. Delaney's words, the man by the road, the baby in his arms. All these years, I'd thought I'd buried my daughter, but maybe I'd only buried the truth. The night swallowed the sound of my breath as I whispered the question that had begun to eat through my sleep. If you took her, Mark, where is she now?
The cabin floorboards groaned like they were tired of keeping secrets. Dust floated through the air in soft golden lines, settling over everything. The walls, the shelves, the silence. Leah was the one who found it, a small rusted box tucked behind a stack of warped books. Her hands shook when she pulled it free. Inside, beneath yellowed papers and a cracked photo frame, was a tape recorder. A strip of old masking tape across the front read 2 words in fading ink, "For Anna." For a long time, neither of us moved. Only the faint drip of rain through the roof filled the air. My name looked foreign in someone else's handwriting. We sat at the kitchen table that had long forgotten what warmth felt like. The recorder sat between us, small, square, waiting. The air smelled of mildew and rust. Every sound felt too loud. The clock ticking, Leah's breath, the rain outside. She looked at me like a question she was afraid to ask. "Do you want me to press play?" I nodded. The click was soft, but the sound that followed wasn't. Static. Then, a voice. Low, trembling, too familiar. "Anna, if you're hearing this, it means I didn't make it back." My throat closed. Mark. I hadn't heard his voice in years, not since the funeral. Even now, it carried that quiet steadiness that used to make people trust him. The tape hissed between his words, like it was trying to breathe. I did what I thought was right, but right has a way of turning into something else when you carry it too long. His words crawled out of the recorder, slow and heavy. I couldn't watch you lose everything, Anna. You'd already lost him, and I couldn't let you lose her, too. Leah's head turned toward me. She didn't say anything. She didn't have to. My pulse beat in my throat. Mark's voice went on. She was alive when they pulled her from the wreck. Barely breathing, but alive. They were going to take her. Somewhere she'd disappear. Somewhere they said it was safer. He paused, breathing unevenly through the static. I took her. I told them she was gone. I couldn't tell you, Anna. You would have gone after her. You would have gone after them. A tremor ran through his words. Your husband found out something before the crash, something he wasn't supposed to. I thought keeping her away would keep you safe. Then, silence. Leah whispered, He's talking about me, isn't he? The words felt like glass in my mouth. Yes, I said. He's talking about you.
The tape clicked again, softer this time. Mark's voice came back, but it sounded different now, thinner, like he was fading. I thought I was doing the right thing, he said. But she grew up asking where she came from. I told her stories about a woman who sang to the moon, about a man who built birdhouses. I tried to make you real without breaking the lie. I pressed my hand to my chest. Something inside me ached like it was waking up after too long a sleep. Mark exhaled. There's more you should know. About your husband, about what he found, but I can't say it here. I left something. You'll find it when you're ready. Another pause, then almost a whisper. She wasn't meant to be yours. And the tape stopped. Just like that. The silence that followed felt alive. Leah leaned forward, pressing her fingertips to the recorder. What does that mean? She asked. I didn't answer, because I didn't know. Or maybe part of me did. Outside, the rain had stopped. The cabin seemed to hold its breath, listening. I looked at Leah, the girl who wasn't supposed to be mine, but somehow still was. Her eyes, wide and waiting, caught the light in a way that made the room tilt. In her, I saw everything I'd lost, and everything I still didn't understand. The recorder sat between us, silent now, but the weight of it lingered. Mark's voice, his choice, his secret. She wasn't meant to be yours. The words replayed in my mind like the hum of an old song. I stood, the floor creaking under my feet. Somewhere out there, truth was still waiting, and this time, I wasn't afraid to find it. The rain began again, soft against the roof. The world, it seemed, was still listening. The morning came in gray and quiet. Rain pressed against the windows, soft as breathing. I hadn't slept. Mark's voice, that last line, kept circling in my mind. She wasn't meant to be yours. So I did what I hadn't done in years. I opened the trunk at the foot of the bed. Inside, his journals waited, leather cracked, pages yellowed at the edges. They smelled of cedar and smoke, like the man himself. I laid them out one by one, the ink fading, the handwriting slanted and tired. If Mark had carried a secret, my husband had buried his. Somewhere between the lines, I could feel it breathing. I turned the pages slowly, tracing the loops of his pen. Most entries were about ordinary things, weather, work, our daughter's laugh. But every few pages his tone shifted, little notes in the margins, words half erased, records incomplete, hospital error. Who was there that night? At first, I thought it was about the crash, but then, deeper in the journal, a date that didn't belong. The week she was born. He'd written, "Something isn't right. Her bracelet doesn't match the records." I stopped breathing. The room seemed to tilt. The rain outside slowing, stretching. He had circled a name I didn't recognize, a nurse. Then another note below it. Switched or mistake. My hands shook. The ink had bled through the page, ghosting onto the one behind it. I thought about Leah, about her eyes, her quiet hums, the way she stood at the lake like she'd been there before. And suddenly, the world I'd built, every memory, every truth, began to unthread. Leah came into the room just as the rain stopped. Her hair was damp, her face pale from the cold morning. She saw the journals spread across the bed. "What are you doing?" she asked. "Looking," I said, "for answers." She came closer, her eyes landing on the open page, the circled names, the shaky handwriting. "What does it mean?" I swallowed hard. "I don't know, but it seems your father, he thought there'd been a mistake. Maybe a switch? Maybe you weren't—" I couldn't finish. Leah stepped back, shaking her head. "That's not possible." Her voice was barely a whisper. I looked at her, the way her hands trembled at her sides, the confusion in her eyes. "You were found," I said, "after the crash, and before that, there were doubts, records missing, a nurse who disappeared." Her breath caught. She turned toward the window, eyes glistening. "All this time," she said softly, "and no one ever told the truth." She sat down beside me, her voice breaking through the stillness. "So, what am I then? Whose am I?" I couldn't answer. The question was too large, too heavy. All I could do was close the journal, my hand resting on the cover. "You're here," I said. "That's what matters." She looked at me, really looked, for the first time in weeks, and for a second, I saw both my daughter and a stranger in the same pair of eyes. Tears welled, slipping silently down her cheeks. "They lied to both of us," she whispered. I nodded. "Yes, they did." She turned away, her shoulders trembling. "I don't know who I'm supposed to be anymore." Her voice cracked on the last word. I reached for her hand, hesitating before touching it. Her skin was warm, alive, real. "You're mine," I said quietly. Maybe not by birth, but by every day that came after. For a long while, neither of us spoke. The rain started again, gentle and endless, and in it, I heard something like forgiveness trying to find its way through. That night, I sat alone by the window with the journal open on my lap. Outside, the world was washed clean. Dark sky, wet earth, the hush after the storm. Leah had gone to bed early. Before she did, she paused in the doorway. Her eyes were soft, tired. "I don't blame you. I just need time." I understood. Some truths don't heal. They just change the shape of what we love. I traced my husband's handwriting one last time, switched or mistake, and closed the book. In the quiet, I whispered to the dark, "If you were trying to protect us, you failed. But maybe this is how the truth saves us now." Somewhere in the house, Leah stirred, and for the first time, I didn't feel alone. The rain had ended some time before dawn, but the world still carried the sound of it, a hush that clung to the trees, the roof, the earth. I stepped out onto the porch barefoot. The boards were damp, cool against my skin. In the pale light, everything looked softer. The gravel road, the fields beyond, even the old rocking chair that hadn't moved in years. Behind me, the door creaked open. Leah came out, wrapped in the blanket I'd left for her. Her hair was tangled, her eyes swollen from the night before. Neither of us said anything. There was nothing left to explain. Only minutes passed before she spoke again. "Maybe he tried," she said, in his own way. I didn't ask who she meant, Mark or her father, or both. It didn't matter anymore. The truth had tangled them together, and us with them. The wind lifted the edge of the blanket. Leah pulled it tighter, then leaned her head against my shoulder. The weight of it, familiar, fragile, broke something open in me. "Maybe," she whispered, "we found each other at the right time." Her voice was soft, like she was afraid the morning would take it back. I didn't move, didn't breathe for a moment. The right time. I thought about the years between us, the lies that filled them, the hands that built them. How close we'd come to never knowing each other at all. Maybe the right time wasn't about when, maybe it was about now. This quiet space after the storm, where love didn't need proof. I closed my eyes. The air hummed with light. We stayed like that until the sun rose high enough to warm the porch. The mist burned away and the world came back into focus. The fence, the road, the long stretch of field. Leah sighed, a sound between relief and exhaustion. She didn't move her head from my shoulder. For the first time in a long while, the silence didn't ache. It settled around us like a blanket, soft and forgiving. Some things, I realized, don't need to be fixed. They just need to be lived with. Gently, quietly.